Go ahead.
All right, cool. Happening now. Okay, so that is pretty much how you make paper, and that is specifically handmade paper. So you should see on this slide over here, these are a lot of the elements of paper, the method of manufacturing. So on the other side of handmade paper would be machine-made papers. So the computer sheet that you have, it's certainly a machine-made paper. And somewhere in the middle between a handmade and machine-made paper is a mold-made paper, and it sort of combines a lot of the properties between the two. The efficiency of the machine-made and the charming qualities that come with handmade paper. All papers, despite the manufacturing, is made out of fibers, and our computer sheets are made out of wood pulp, aka sulfite, and sometimes it's called cellulose, but it's pretty much just sulfite. Other fibers come from the cotton plant, and those would be your cotton papers. Flax plant makes linen. The mulberry tree makes kozo, and I'll go into a little bit more with fibers as we go over the papers. Some of the more eccentric papers are made out of elephant dung and vegetables, so that's pretty wild. Elephant dung is actually a very elegant paper.
Really?
Yes, it is. So as we go over the papers, I'll share what fiber it's made out of and what it means practically in your art making work. Another element of paper is called sizing, and sizing is a substance that's used to reduce the paper's tendency to absorb liquid. And sizing can be a starch, an animal-based glue, or a plastic polymer. And this is really good information to know for anyone that's trying to avoid animal products in their life. Yeah, sizing is probably the most animal-based component of paper, and a lot of it has animal products, so it's kind of surprising. Another element of paper is going to be the weight and the surface texture and what's called decals. I forgot to throw decals in the paper, but a decal is the edge of the page, and for machine-made papers, it's going to be cut because that's what machines do. For the mold-made and the handmade papers, a decal is when the paper sort of tapers off into a thin sheet, very, very thin substance. And it has, it's novel, like it's this glamorous part of paper. So it's something to think about when an artist is presenting their artwork. Are they going to frame it, or are they going to show the edges of the paper? Because there can be some really charming things going on. So that is paper in a nutshell for the elements. So I'm going to share another screen so we can kick off the tour in Europe right now.
Oh.
Okay. So, okay. All right. So can you guys see this okay?
Yeah. Selection of European paper.
Yes. Awesome. So the papers that look white here, they're actually not that, they're actually white papers, but I had to tone it down so that you can see some of the textures. So while I'm talking about some of these papers, go ahead and look at the details in the sheets if it's able to, as much as you can on the computer screen. And I'm going to spend some time on I'm going to spend a lot of time on these European papers to talk and show the nuances between all the sheets from around the world. The first set of papers I wanted to show you is going to be here in Italy, the Fabriano's. It is an Italian-based mill that's been around since the 1200s, and this town was the first European region to start paper production due to the trade routes, starting in China and moving through the Middle East and going to Italy. So Fabriano specializes in artsy papers and is regarded for their watermark security papers and banknotes. They really consider themselves watermark professionals. Are you guys familiar with watermarks? Yeah, okay, cool. So in Germany, we have I chose two paper mills, Zirkel and Hahnemühle. Hahnemühle has been around since 1584, and it's possible that well, I know a lot of paper mills popped up after the Gutenberg press was invented in the 1400s. But Hahnemühle is really special because it's been a reliable art paper supplier since it started. In France, we have Arches Paper. So that's these three right here. And Arches is well known for their high quality cotton watercolor papers. And my personal favorite is an Amsterdam mill at Zaanstad, and it's home to the last wind-powered paper mill in the world. Der de Schoolmeester. I have butchered the pronunciation. I keep on trying to get it right, but I give up. And this mill is my absolute favorite because it's so eco-friendly. They harvest the plants from around the mill to make the linen or the fiber that's used to make these very luscious sheets of paper. So I want to bring your attention to the different surface textures here. They kind of look like patterns, but the technical term for the surface is going to be the tooth of the paper. So that's why I have it such stark contrast. So you can see like the Murillos have this like vertical tooth, and then here at Circle, there's this diagonal thing going on. The tooth is either designed by the paper mill, or sometimes it just happens, it's happenstance impression from the paper making process. So for Amsterdam, the Zaan paper right here, that impression comes from the towels that's between the layers of paper as they're drying. So over here, we have, for the Arches papers, there are 3 types of watercolor paper surface textures. Hot pressed is smooth, and cold press has some texture, and rough is the absolutely most textured. In general, cotton makes an excellent watercolor paper, and you want to make sure the paper has good quality sizing to repel liquid so that the pigment sits on top and is more vibrant. So when a watercolorist can have the most success with their painting when the pigment sits on top of the paper, and watercolor sheets are certainly made for that. A lower quality watercolor paper is usually made with sulfite, kind of the same material as the computer paper. And what is unfortunate about those papers, you can make it work, but as you apply heavy layers of painting or in glazers, a lower quality paper may start to crumble and the sizing will be lifted from inside and distort the color of the pigment, so you won't have those true colors. Another issue with paper, watercolor techniques, is buckling happens when pools of water make paper expand and contract in certain areas. So if you're working on a large sheet and you have pools of water, well, if you're doing heavy painting, let's say on one side and another side, the whole sheet of paper may start to buckle. So watercolors have come up with techniques to sort of help with that, but also buying a heavier weight paper, which can cost double the cost, will help with that problem. And sometimes watercolorists and painters find it worth it to just get the heavier paper so they don't have to go through the ropes of preparing the surface. So just because a paper's thick doesn't mean it's going to be fitting for heavy painting or watercolor. Fabriano Murillo is considered the cardboard of fine paper, which is like, it makes me laugh that it has that nickname. It can take drawing and making and embossing, but it is not good with wet media because it doesn't have the sizing inside of it. It is just going to slurp up all the paint and not really give what the watercolorist is looking for. Talking and moving on to drawing, this Fabriano Tiziano is just like a really fun piece of paper. The whole line of papers has such amazing vibrant colors, and you can see here that there are these like really interesting lines there. And these lines is, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, I've tried to do some research, but Tiziano papers are made with cotton and sulfite. So these fibers might be like dyed cotton or sulfite, but it's probably cotton because cotton has longer strands than sulfites. But you can also see a slight tooth here that makes it really ideal for drawing papers. Now our copper plates are right here, and they're meant for printmaking techniques. They're very soft and you can see highly textured. The Hahnemuller copper plate is softer and thicker of the two, but the Zirkel it's got this crispy quality to it, and when you see a full sheet, it curls on all 4 sides, It kind of looks like a pillow. It's really adorable. So a fun fact about the Hahnemuller papers is it's certified vegan, and for you photographers out there, Hahnemuller specializes in a line of art papers where you can print your photographs on these textured papers. So most photographs are going to be on these like glossy photos, but if you want to really just like have your photographs on the poetic and beautiful surfaces of these types of papers, Hahnemuller gives you that option. And so for our oil painters out there, shout out to them. The Arsh. So speaking of paper preparation, like I was talking about, it just is a lot of work, especially for oil painting. If you want to paint oil on a sheet of paper, you typically have to paint layers of gesso on it or prime the surface. But Arsh is amazing because they came up with this paper just called oil paper, and it actually has chemicals in it that make it ready to receive oil paints. The challenge with oil paints is that when you put that directly on paper without being primed, you will end up with moldy bread. It's going to be disgusting. So back to Zahn. Zahn is really amazing. It's made out of linen, and I don't know if you've ever worn a linen suit, but linen cracks very easily. It's just kind of strong like that, and it holds memory. But somehow this paper mill has made this paper just exceptionally soft, and it is just so beautiful for a very like stiff and sturdy linen. And a lot of that has to do with the drying process. It's the only paper that is made out of that material and can be that soft, and it's because it's dried on a line. Think of people putting their laundry outside and drying it on the line. That's essentially the drying process for this paper. Doesn't really happen too often because no one's got space like that anymore. All right, so this is pretty much the gist of European papers, and it's also referred to as Western papers. No surprise there. The Western techniques are considered, layers and layers of pigments, wet on wet application, hard pencils, and a lot of erasure. There's a lot of heavy working and layering. The Western's counterpart, so-called Eastern papers, are not made for these techniques. So I'm going to move down to the Asian papers here. And most of these papers are made out of a variety of plant-based fibers. There are hundreds of paper artisans around the continent. But the main difference between these paper artisans is how they prepare their fibers. And the thing is that with some of these fibers, like Gampi right here, it has to be hand prepared, which just makes it like a really physically painful and laborious process. Secondly, different paper makers are committed to their own culture's tradition of paper making. But all throughout Asia, the papers are either hand, mold, or machine made. So while I'm talking, I invite you to look at these swatches and appreciate the textures and soft colors and tones and some of the characters of each swatch as much as you can on the computer. I don't know how it's translating on your end.
It's good.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna zoom in and go to Japan. Right here. So it's kind of hard to tell. So I'm just gonna go to the Bhutanese right here. So the Japanese and the Bhutanese handmade papers are made with keeping the philosophy of Zen in mind. The idea is that, and this is obviously a brown sheet of paper, but the idea for most of the papers, which is mostly white, is that the purest white sheet should reflect the beauty of the natural fiber as well as the inner harmony of the paper maker. Now I tried to capture a white sheet here, but it was perfectly white. Very difficult to photograph, so I gave up. But I managed to get a beautiful photo of this Gampi sheet right here, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. The Nepalese papers, they are committed to, well, Nepalese papers is produced similar to the Japanese process. the Japanese artisans definitely inform. Nepalese got their technique from Japan. I always like to keep these papers in my studio. These particular sheets right here are handmade by Khadi Himalayan Handmaids, a company based in Nepal, and they closely follow the centuries-old technique of cooking the fiber in wood ash. It's a process that adds strength to the paper. So this is a tissue from Thailand right here, and it literally feels like toilet paper, but it is so strong though. It's made out of well, it's called kozo fibers, which comes from a mulberry plant. And if you walk by or walk through the art store, you're gonna find maybe some like white lace papers that have these whimsical circles and these fun little textures. And those are typically made in Thailand. They seem to have monopolized the fun lace papers. Up here we have India, and we have another watercolor paper from India over here. All right, so this is the rough texture. Most papers from India are made out of rag, which is a fancy term for scraps of recycled cotton fabric. And these are usually leftovers from garment factories. Genuine rag fibers are long, and long fibers make for stronger papers. Absolutely. And so this is a standard watercolor paper, and it's made in India, but it follows the same rules as the Arch paper. It comes in 140 and also a heavier weight, and it has different textures as well. MHK jute is an Indian paper. Oh my gosh, the meeting's gonna end in 10. Rachel, what should I do?
Keep going.
I'm gonna keep on going. Okay, so Indian paper, this is, remember how I was talking about how you dip the paper in the water and then you put it off to the side when you're making sheets? So what this paper maker does is they actually do that process, but they laminate the papers together. And they stain this with a brown, and after the paper sheets had dried, they use a huge agate stone to burnish the top of the sheet. And that's how this paper gets its very sheen, smooth surface.
Christine,
Yeah.
do you have a lot left to cover?
I can end it with paper. So 10 minutes should be fine.
I guess you were, because you were going to cover knives and glue too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have a part 2 since this, and maybe that one will get it right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, that's a good plan. So let's just cover paper today.
Okay, that sounds like a
Awesome.
good plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Oh my gosh, fun stuff. So remember what I was talking about, how these papers are strong because of the long fibers? That is exactly why this Gampi is so strong and durable. Like, I don't know if you can see, but this is like a tissue paper. It is thinner. It's like 1-ply tissue, but it is just like one of the strongest papers out there. The Gampi fibers, through its processing, it gains transparency, and it is a crispy and delicate paper. Very, very expensive because it's difficult to harvest and has to be done by hand. I use these sheets for a sculpture process with plaster. Certain papers that I showed you would certainly tear with the method that I was using, but because the nature of these fibers, it could withstand that sculpting process. Okay. So last but not least, we have North American papers. Stonehenge, which is these 3 sheets up here, it's a really versatile paper. Just really popular sheet among all the artists, and the Color Pencil Society has dubbed it its best paper ever. So I want to introduce you to a couple of mills on the continent. This is going to be French paper. French paper is powered by hydroelectric power, and it has been for like decades, and it's 100% family run. Excellent business, excellent product. And then over here, there's a Canadian mill called Saint Armand, and they have a fantastic recycling program where they collect fibers from neighboring manufacturers to make these really unique, just very cute papers. They mechanize part of the paper making process, and most of their sheets are handmade, which also reduces electricity. With this particular sheet, it's made out of the same fiber as the Zahn paper in Europe, linen, but it's a very stiff paper. It's much crispier than like a fresh dollar bill. But you can see how, I don't know, I hope that you can see the fibers there and how like there are these like moments where like the stems are just stuck to the paper. And I just really enjoy that character. And same here also. This is a canal from their Canal papers, and these extra flecks are seasol, which is just some fiber that they got from their neighbor, and they just experimented with it to create these really random papers. And last but not least, this is not technically a paper, but I wanted to add it because it's so fun. This is a paper from Mexico called Papel de Amate. And it's not paper because the pulp is like essentially, think of like a spitball on a piece of glass. The pulp is placed there and obviously arranged in this really creative, artistic way, and it's pressed, and that's how papyrus is made. That's how the Egyptians made it. So what we're seeing here is a papyrus, but you can see like all the beautiful little moments here. So that is paper, and I think that these papers are really helpful because when you're working, in art, and you're tapping into your creativity, you want to be excited about even the surface that you're working on as well as the materials. So these are just like opportunities for little inspirations and stuff. So that's all I got, part one.
Part one.
Very cool.
Most interesting.
Yeah. Oh, she can't hear it.
It's on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is fun to learn about.
Oh, I didn't hear the last part.
Fun to hear about, he said.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, it's fun to talk about. I wish that I could show you the actual pieces, but hey, till next time.
Well, let me just put in a little piece. Our granddaughter, Josephine, which is in Seattle right now, was maybe going to look, but I don't think she could figure out how to get in. She's going to take a watercolor class this summer.
Oh, wonderful.
And so your conversation showing us about watercolor papers would have been really cool for Josephine to see, but oh well.
Well, I'm actually recording it now, so I can send it to her.
Oh,
yeah.
Should we
really?
put this on the website, Rachel, or did you?
What'd you say, Christine?
Did you need me to do something with the recording?
So what we can do, it's going to be a really big file, but I can put it on our Neon YouTube page, which is where I put a bunch of the other virtual Neon videos.
Oh, that
So
would be a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You'll just need to like upload it to Dropbox to me because it's really big. But we can work on that next week.
Yeah, let's do it.
And there's lots of other Neon videos that I've shared on the YouTube page if you guys are looking for other fun things to watch.
So how do I know where to look?
If you go to YouTube and you just put into the search box Neon NFK.
Oh.
You should come up. There's maybe like 6 videos on that page.
Okay. So your page, so to speak, or your.
Yeah, the Neon's YouTube page.
Okay. Neon YouTube.
I got it.
Okay, good.
And you can also go to Facebook. The Facebook also has a video page for Neon where this event page was. There's also a tab for videos.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not very fluent in that yet. I see the button there.
I know there's a lot out there.
You guys did great today. Yes, thanks for hanging out. This was awesome.
All right, we'll look for the next one.
Yeah.
Very cool. We'll do part 2.
Scissors next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
good to see you,
bye-bye.
Dave.
Okay.
Bye-bye, David.
Bye.
See you guys.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christine.
Oh,
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, cool. All right, take care, guys.